Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee, how great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee, how great thou art, how great thou art. And when I think that God, His Son not sparing, sent Him to die, I scarce can take it in, that on a cross, my burden gladly bearing, He bled and died to take away my sin. Cuando el Señor me llame a su presencia, al dulce hogar, al cielo de esplendor, le adoraré, cantando la grandeza de su poder y su infinito amor. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee, how great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee, how great thou art, how great. Mi corazón entona la canción, cuán grande ser, mi corazón. The Savior God, to thee, how great thou art, how great thou art.
Hey everyone, welcome back. I hope that you enjoyed worship. We will get to the message in just a moment, but first I have a couple of things I'd love to share with you. First, we have an opportunity for you to get some resources at redeemerschurch.com/care. You can submit a prayer request, you can access mental health resources, or you can find our community resource network there. If you are struggling maybe to get some food or some clothing right now, you can head there, submit a request, and we will do our best to pair you with some support. We also want to ensure that we maintain a spirit of generosity and giving, so you have ways that you can give at your convenience at redeemerschurch.com. You can also text to give, or you can mail in your giving. And now it's time for the message.
Good morning, friends. My name's Pastor Nick. We've been in this series called Resistism, and the whole thing about it has been about these ideas that we have these dysfunctional habits that are so natural to you and I, and this pandemic has actually exacerbated some. And as we start to edge into some form of normalcy in the world, what we wanted to talk about is, as we look forward to this year and getting into this form of normalcy of some sort, that we don't slip back or stay in these ruts that happen. Oftentimes in the middle of all this, we had these dysfunctional habits that this has just made worse during the last year. Some of them were habits we built during this year because of the changes. And what we are looking at is that there are these scriptural practices, these long-standing habits of the Christian faith that actually help strengthen our emotions, strengthen our spirit to not be in these dysfunctional habits that impact our relationships, our anxieties, etc., etc. Today, I want us to talk about prayer. Prayer can seem like this just nice thing to do. There's a statistic that people all over the world pray. It doesn't matter what their religion. There's even a statistic that says 1 out of 4, 1 out of 5 atheists even pray randomly. And it's kind of just throwing things out into the universe, right? We want to talk about Christian prayer and how much it changes us and transforms us. And it's a call to be deeper, not just flippantly praying as once in a while as things come up. When we have a deep sense of prayer with God, a deep relationship and communication with God, it actually is a resistance. It's a resistance against two things I want to focus on today: fatalism and moralism. In fact, to moralism, I'll add egocentrism. So fatalism, let me focus on that for a second. Fatalism is this idea that there's nothing I can do about it. Like you can get to this place sometimes when you go through so many problems, when you're just like, I just want to give up. Like, I don't see how I could fix anything. It's just going to happen. Sometimes people are even believers and they go, well, God's got this. There's nothing I can do about it. And there's just this idea like, I can't impact the future, or there's nothing I can do, so I'm not going to try. Moralism is on the other side. It's a belief that what I do is earn my righteousness. I've got to earn my favor. I got to earn my grace. You know, if I am super moral, if I do things the right way, then I can fix my circumstances. Egocentrism has is a bit like that. It's this idea that I'm the center of the universe. It all rests on me. And so I have to act, because if I work hard enough, then I can make enough money. I can have enough influence, whatever it might be. It's very similar in that sense, because it still puts it all on me. It's all about what I do, right? And when we think about prayer changes the way our minds approach the world. It changes our understanding of things because of our relationship to God. There's two types of people I want us to think about, and sometimes we're both of them. If you'll join me at the board, I want to show you. If you're fatalistic, you might come to a place where you are a why trier. A why trier. All right? You know, you get to this place where it's like, why do I even try? You know, like maybe you grew up in a place where you had no say in anything, and every time you tried something, it failed, or somebody was set against you, and you just get to this defeatist place. You're like, why do I even try? Like, I have tried and I've tried and nothing goes the way I planned. So you become a why trier, right? On the other side, maybe that's not you. Maybe when things get difficult, you are a try harder, all right? Harderer, however you want to say it. I'm a why trier or a try harder. Maybe that's you. You sit there and you go, man, if I just work more, if I just put in more hours, if I just go fight a little bit more, if I can just get the right thing to go my way, if I get my way of doing things, my beliefs, my politics, if I just try harder, I can fix what is wrong in my life, in my world, in my marriage, in my relationships, in my work. I'm going to try harder. I'm going to work more. So you got the why trier and the try harder. But you know what that happens, whether you're on this side of things or on this side of things, you get to a place where you really live it out as a why pray. You know, this is why we don't have a real serious prayer life. I'm not talking about throwing up prayers to heaven in the middle of driving your car. I'm saying we don't have a serious prayer life because whether you think about it or not, you find yourself as a why trier or a try harder. And here's the problem. Why would I pray? If I sit there going, God's got this, there's nothing I can do about it, then why pray? You know, like, why do I have to pray if I think nothing's going to change? My life is my life. There's nothing that's going to get better. There's nothing that's going to change me. You know, why try? So why pray? But if you're a try harder, it's the same thing. I'm going to go work harder. Why do I need to go pray if I'm in control, if I think I can solve my own problems, right? Right? So we get to why pray. And this is a big reason why I think a lot of us don't pray regularly, why we don't make time in the morning or time in the night to commune with our Father, to talk to Him, because at some level we live in these two realities. It either doesn't matter or I got this, right? I will figure it out. And what happens is I hope this hits home for you. I think maybe we end up in a cycle that we're all of these things at times. You start out and maybe you're going through something's hard at work, something's hard at family, so I'm going to try harder, right? I'm going to try hard here, and I am going to just work, and I'm going to do more, and I'm going to try to solve all my problems, and I'm going to try to solve all my conflicts, so I'm trying harder. But you know the problem is the longer you do that, you put in your own effort, you try to make your own morality, you try to fix your relationship with God even, I'm going to do more. There comes a point where you hit burnout. Burnout might be an anxiety attack. It might be illnesses that come out. It might be more splits in your relationships. It might be where you worked and you haven't had any time at home, and eventually you just have no emotional, physical prowess left. And so you burn out. And you know, sometimes what burnout does is that we get so emotionally exhausted that we do enter into a place where I'm a why trier. I gotta I just am like, man, I've worked, and now I'm having these emotional letdowns, and I'm just exhausted. Why? I can't even try anymore. I'm kind of giving up. I'm giving up on that marriage I was working harder for. I'm giving up at work. I'm not even going to try to make them happy anymore. They're never happy. Like, why try? Why try with God? I tried. I was doing all these good things. I went to 20 programs at church, and now I'm burnt out and exhausted, and nothing's getting better. I'm not even going to try to pray or go to Bible studies anymore. Like, why try? And what happens is when you stop trying is you kind of stop investing into relationships. You stop listening to God. You start getting into your head more and being negative and feeling down on yourself or down about others. And eventually it leads you to some type of brokenness, some type of crisis, right? And now you're having a crisis in your life. Something's falling apart. You're emotionally or your relationships. And you know what the answer to a crisis is to try harder. Now I got to work on it. Now I got to fix this crisis now that I've hit this pinnacle where there's a major split or a major breakdown. So now I'm in crisis mode and trying to fix it by doing more. And the cycle starts again. I don't know if that's you. I don't know if you've been in that cycle, but you got to start asking then what do we do different? Because I think most of us at some level can probably see this in our lives, and maybe you're in it. Where are you at in this cycle? I challenge you to think about at the end of the sermon today. Where do you find yourself? Is this a cycle for you? Which one are you? Are you a why trier? Are you a try harder? And do you see how this kind of keeps going? And what are we going to do different about it? Today, what I want us to do is our passage is actually based in Matthew 26. It's Matthew 26, 36 through 56. So it's a longer passage. I challenge you to read it. But it is a fairly well-known one about Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. This is right before Jesus is going to be crucified, and he knows it. He knows what's coming. He's been preparing his disciples for it. So he goes to this garden with his disciples, and he says, I have to go pray. This very big deal is about to happen. There is a crisis about to happen. There is a problem that's about to take place, and he says, I'm going to go to the garden, and I'm going to pray. I'm going to be with my Father. And he tells his disciples, I want you to wait here while I go to pray. You guys wait here, rest, and pray with me, but I'm going to go be by myself. So he goes, and here's what he says. He says in Matthew 26, verse 38, he says, my soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Talk about a crisis, right? I am overwhelmed with sorrow. I'm so afraid of what's about to come. He's having deep despair. And that's why he's going to pray. So he goes and he prays to his Father, and this is what he says. He says, Father, if it is possible, will you please take this cup from me? Will you please take this suffering from me? Yet he says, not my will, but yours be done. It's not about what I want, but yours be done. Now, this can look a little bit like fatalism. There's nothing I can do about it. You're going to do everything. But he is crying out to God, and I'm going to tell you why it's not that. But the next part of the story, what Jesus does is he gets done praying, crying out to God. There's actually a portion that tells us that he was bleeding through his brow. That's how much in crisis and despair he was. And he gets done praying to God, this cry out for help. And he goes and he looks at his disciples, and they fell asleep. They didn't pray. They were why prayers for some reason. They weren't praying. He told them, you should sit here. You should be prayerful, but they weren't. He goes, you guys couldn't even stay awake while I prayed. You weren't even talking to God. Like I told you what's going to happen, and you're just sitting there asleep. Sounds like us sometimes. Like I have all these problems that are around me, but I'm just sitting there. There's nothing I can do about it. I'm not even going to pray about it. So he goes back. Jesus' language changes a little bit in verse 42. He goes, Father, not if it is possible. He says, if it is not possible for you to take this cup from me. He says, may your will be done, not mine. May your will be done, not mine. Again, he's like, you know what? I'm realizing there's nothing I can do about this, that this has to happen. So I asked that this didn't have to happen, but I'm realizing this might have to happen. You've told me this is my mission. This is for the salvation of the world, but I'm calling out to you and saying, I want your will to be done because I trust you. I'm going to talk about how powerful this is in a minute, but he comes back to the disciples, and once again, on a third time, they are sleeping. And this is what he says to them. You needed to watch and pray so that you do not fall in temptation. He says, for your spirit is willing, but your flesh is weak. He says, you need to be watchful. You need to be on alert. You need to be focused on God and praying, because if you do not pray, you will fall in temptation. Now, I don't claim to know exactly all the temptations he's talking about. I'm sure there's a lot of them, but I'm going to give you this one today. You need to watch and pray, or else you're going to fall into the temptation of working harder, trying to prove that you have worth, trying to prove that you're good, trying to prove that you can fix things in your own right. You need to watch and pray, because you're going to fall into the temptation to take control and be God yourself, and that's going to lead to burnout, because nobody can succeed at that. You need to watch and pray that you don't fall in temptation of coming to the place that there's nothing that I can do, I give up, there's no purpose. What is the use of trying? Of despair. Why try? You need to watch and pray, because if you don't, there is this temptation of brokenness. If you don't pray, you're going to fall into this temptation. And you know what's crazy is when you watch the rest of the story, it's interesting the dichotomy between how his disciples respond to crisis and how Jesus responded to the crisis. So right after this is when you hear the story about people coming to arrest him in the garden, to take him to his crucifixion. This is a big deal. This is a crisis moment, right? And how do his disciples respond? Well, you get actually two different types. One of them pulls out a sword, and he goes and slices off the ear of somebody and begins fighting and trying to protect Jesus. What does that look like? He is a try harder. He's like, I'm going to save you. I'm going to fix this. Like, we cannot let this happen. I'm going to do more. I'm going to do more and fight, and it doesn't matter what it costs me. I'm going to save this, right? He's a try harder. But then what did the others do? It tells us that the others ran away. So this crisis moment came, and the others are fleeing, and they're running away. They are a why trier. You know, like, what's the point? There's nothing we can do. We just got to let it happen. See, these people who didn't build the strength to come before their Father and pray and commune with Him, they didn't see what was happening. They didn't understand the will of God. They weren't listening for it, so they tried harder, or they got to why try, and they ran away. Man, if that's not us sometimes, right? But the thing is, Jesus is different. What Jesus' prayer isn't a why try, your will be done. And he's not trying harder. He's not saying, I'll do what I got to do. I'm going to do this. I'm going to fix this. No, there's this tension here. See, while some ran away and some fought, Jesus prayed. And he willfully went to the cross. That's what we can't miss. He didn't go because God made him like a marionette doll. He went because he was being willfully obedient to his Father and trusting that things are going to work. That was the active decision. See, sometimes it takes an active decision to be still and trust God instead of running away. It takes an active decision to be confident that even though what's in front of me is scary and awful, I'm trusting that doing things the way God is leading is going to be greater, not only for everybody else, but including myself. See, it wasn't fatalism because he had to make a choice to be obedient in that moment. And yet it wasn't moralism because he sought God's guidance to say, I will do what you lead me to do. It's not all on my power to figure this out. I'm trusting that my Father is going to do what is greater in this if I do what is right. There's a point where he says this, and I think it tells us a lot about Jesus. He says in verse 53, do you not think that I couldn't have called on my Father for him to bring down a legion of angels to save me? He said, I could have tried harder. I could take this under my power. I actually have the power to say, bring down those angels and solve this for me. Allow me to miss this opportunity of crucifixion and resurrection. Like, I don't want to go through it, so I could call down people to solve all this. So he wasn't fatalistic. He had the power to be moralistic and egocentric and say, it is about me and I'm taking control and power. And he willfully chose not to. There's a theologian named Karl Barth, and he says, the clasping of the hands in prayer is the beginning of an uprising against the disorder of the world. He says prayer isn't this fluffy thing you just do at church. It's not a nicety to say, Our Father, bless this meal. He says, no, this is a resistance. This is an uprising against the disorder of this world, against the disorders and the dysfunctional habits and the powers and principalities of this world. See, when Jesus prayed, it was decisive, right? It was faithful. It was about a love of God and a trust of God. It wasn't moralism. It wasn't, I got this, I'll figure this out, I'm doing this. It was, God, Father, I trust you that whatever your will is, it's going to be great for everybody, and it's going to actually be great for me. You know, there's a story about the earliest African converts. You would come to Christianity, and they actually developed these habits of praying consistently. And what they would do is they would go out through these fields to these private areas where they could be with the Father and pray. But over time, people would start to notice that you were going to your spot to pray because the grass in the field would be mowed down by your walking. You know, it would be flattened. And over time, they would start to notice that some people's pathways to prayer were starting to grow grass because they were no longer walking out there consistently to be in prayer. And they would come to him and go, brother, grass grows on your path. Sister, grass grows on your path. It means I can see that you're no longer praying. And maybe they went because they no longer needed God. They got it. Or maybe because they got to a place of things have not been going well, so why try? But it became obvious because grass was growing on the path that they used to walk to be with God. It was no longer being trod. Maybe you have stopped coming to God other than throwing out some random prayers like any other atheist or religion. Maybe you've stopped really coming to God because you've lost hope or things are comfortable enough that you got this. You know, I was thinking through this and what it's like, and I want to give this example. If you think about an adult child, okay, maybe you're old enough to have adult children. They're trying to figure out their years out. Maybe they're in their 20s and they're trying to figure out life. And they come to their father and they say, Father, I need your wisdom. I need your guidance. I'm doing this big thing in life. I don't know what to do. Can you guide me? What does that say about their relationship? And what does that say about the adult child? Does it say that he is helpless, that he is fatalistic, there's nothing he can do about it, that the father has to do everything for him just because he's coming and seeking his guidance and his wisdom? No. Does it mean that the father's going to do everything for him because he's seeking his wisdom? No, he's not helpless. Does it mean that he is powerless or, doesn't need to take action? No, not at all. It means that he has this love and reverence for his father, that he knows that if I ask my father and I trust my father, that if I'm in this relationship with him, that he's going to give me guidance, but he still has to take decisive action with that guidance to go live out that wisdom. But he doesn't then go out and go, I've got this, I'm going to figure this out, I'm going to try harder. He now has this confidence, but it's a humble confidence. And it's a humble confidence because he knows, man, my father has gone before me. My father has done this well. He has this wisdom. So I can walk in confidence, but it's with a humility because it's not my doing. It's not my wisdom. It's not, I've got to figure this out by myself. I'm confident, so I'm not anxious because I have the guidance of my father, but I'm humble because I realize I need guidance from one who has gone before me, who loves me, and who I can trust. And so there's a humility. It's not egocentric because it recognizes it needed that child needs that guidance. It's not moralistic because it's not trying to prove that they're good on their own by what they do. They're reliant on their father, but it's not fatalistic. They realize they have to act as an adult and live out what they're hearing in the guidance of it, right? And I think what it really says about the son and the father is because they talk so often. A son who trusts his father to give him guidance is a son who has spent a lot of time watching, loving, hearing from his father, and coming to a place where he reveres him and trusts him that much to give him wisdom. And that relationship has grown so strong that he knows that I love him, and therefore I know my father is going to give me guidance that not only is good and and leads me right and will probably work out, but it actually will be in my best interest. See, that's the tension. That's the beautiful tension of prayer, is I don't come to the Father fatalistically, right? Because I've received the wisdom from one who has the wisdom of years. I've gone to the Word and I've seen how good it is and that it's true, and I've developed this relationship with the Father where I trust Him, but it emboldens me to act. It makes me confident to go out and say, I've been given the guidance from the one who created all things and all truth. And if I have that, then I'm emboldened to act. Therefore, I'm not sitting there going, why try? And yet I'm not going out anxiously feeling like it all depends on me, because I know if the Father says it, even if it goes bad, even if it's hard, even if it's difficult, that this will actually ultimately work out because I can trust Him. And the only way I trust Him is because I've talked and listened and understood and seen Him like that. You know, when I look at this cycle, if you have been in this cycle, I want you to think about this. How do you get out of it? How do we get out of this cycle of I'm trying harder, I'm burnt out, I give up, why try? And then I get myself in this crisis because I quit interacting and serving and guiding and living out my faith. I am now in a crisis of brokenness. How do I get out of this cycle? What is the off-ramp? What is the off-ramp out of the cycle of your life, right? The off-ramp is prayer. And I'm not, again, I want you to hear this. Everybody says they pray. Atheists, 1 out of 5, 1 out of 4. People of every religion, it is not the same as what I'm talking about. I'm talking about prayer in which you're dependent in the Word of God, hearing from Him, listening and practicing, trusting, and really getting guidance for the areas of your life, even before crisis. Because if we are praying beforehand, we have the strength to not get in this cycle. To go out in confidence, to be confident that, man, I got the wisdom of God, so I am emboldened to act. I'm emboldened to act, and yet it's not all on me, so I don't have to try to prove something, that it will work better than I could have planned because I trust my Father. You know, I was doing my prayer time and my journaling with God, and I had this realization recently, like last week. I have all this anxiety because I am a try harder kind of guy. I don't get to why try very often. I'm a do more. I can fix this. And I don't go to prayer oftentimes because I can figure it out. I go to my figuring out and my planning first. But I remembered when I came to this church, before I came here, I was in prayer about, God, what would you have me do? And if you've been to this church any time, you heard the miracle of how I got here. I was driving by, and long story short, essentially God told me through 3 different means, you need to walk into that church and see if they need a pastor. I knew nothing about it, didn't know they were looking for one, nothing. Just radically crazy miracle guidance of God. But yet, I've spent 4.5 years here worried, is it going to fail? Am I doing things right? Is it perfect? I got to try harder. I got to plan better. I got to do more. And what God spoke to me last week during my journaling time is, if I guided you to be here and you're listening to me and staying near to me, like the father and child scenario, do you realize you can't fail? Like, I made you come here, I have a plan for you, and I'm guiding you. As long as you stay listening to me and don't do your own thing and run off doing things the way you want them or screwing it up that way. If you're listening to me, you can't fail. Now, that doesn't mean that it's going to go with what I call success, but it means it's going to be greater, that whatever He's doing in me and in others, He is working it out. You can't fail because you've listened to me. I'm with you. Like the Father, I'm walking alongside of you so you can walk in a humble confidence. Not because you've got it all figured out. Not because it's going to go as you planned. But because you are listening to me and my wisdom does not fail even when it looks dark. Friends, if you find yourself in this cycle right now or have been and you know it's coming again, here's my question. Have you been a why trier? Have you been try harder? Have you been going through this cycle? Then I'm going to ask you this, brothers, sisters, does the grass grow on your path? Like, have you been walking that daily, that path to just commune with God and go, I want to listen, I want to know your word, I want to know your wisdom before I act, before I try. I want to lean on your wisdom. If you're in that cycle, ask yourself that. What's my path look like? Does the grass grow on it? Or maybe it's like Jesus when he came to his disciples and they were sleeping in the garden. And he goes, you need to watch out. If you do not pray, you're going to keep falling into this temptation, this cycle of problems, this disorder, this chaos. If you do not pray, you better watch out. Like, you need to stay awake and alert of what God is leading you in, because if you don't, you're going to end up in falling into some temptation. You're going to have the temptation to quit. Why try? Or you're going to have the temptation to try harder until you burn out and burn every bridge in your life and family and relationships. When Jesus faced the cross and he went to cry out to his Father. See, we believe Jesus is God incarnate in the flesh of man, part of the Trinity, but he still went to his Father to pray because he was in this perfect union with him to seek his power. He knew what had to be done. He knew the scary thing coming. He knew what his mission was, but he went there because in relationship to his Father, he was filled with strength and to act and emboldened to act in that strength because he knew he could trust the Father. And you know what? He said, I could fight, but he didn't fight because he knew that the Father is not going to bring him to something that isn't going to be for the ultimate good. He wasn't simply being sacrificed and everybody else is going to prosper. In fact, Jesus was resurrected and ascended to the right hand of God, and his name elevated above every other name in the world. And so even while it looked bleak, the Father was not only saving everybody through Jesus Christ, but elevating Christ himself. And I believe he does that still with us today. He might lead you into difficult things, but he'll fill you with the strength and the confidence to know he's by you. It may not go exactly as you plan, but it will go exactly the way you need it to form you into a greater person, a stronger person, and you're going to get greater things than you could have ever hoped or imagined while you serve God and others. But the power of prayer is to be with the Father in which you can trust the movement and the guidance to make those decisions. When you recognize your cycles, I want to ask you, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to be a why trier, a try harder? Are you going to get to this place where you say, why pray? And if you say, yes, Nick, I have been in these cycles, then here's what I'm going to say. You need to get to a place, instead of being a why prayer, getting to a pray harder. You want to get out of the cycle, we got to move from being why prayers to pray harder. Pray more. I want to give you 4 things as a challenge today to develop your prayer life. Sometimes it's hard to know how to pray. I know many of you maybe don't know how to pray. You're newer to the church or newer to the faith. I'm going to break it down in 4 easy things. There's 4 types of prayer. The number one we do is help. It's called petitioning. It's like, God, I need, God, help. Maybe when crisis I pray. Maybe in the car I just go, hey, thanks, God. But I don't really spend communing time with God to build strength. So I want you to build a habit daily of just 4 different types of prayer. Help, thanks, wow, and say, what? Wow's kind of like thanks, but it's really taking the time when you have missed things going around you because you're so upset, feeling so down, or you're just so busy trying harder that you haven't really stopped to observe like just how great God is, like the beauty of your children or the beauty of his creation, of like just sitting there going, wow, like God is amazing. There's adoration, and you use your prayer time to go, God, man, I see the amazing things about you. I think of Psalm 8 where David says, like, I look at your stars and the amazing creation of your world, and I think, who am I for you to be mindful of me, right? Like that's adoration of God. So we have help, God. There's thanks. I'm so grateful for these things you've done in my life. And wow, like God is bigger than my little reality. It helps us take our mind out of my own specific selfish needs into the greater thing God does in this world that I can trust. When I do those things, I can trust the Father because I see how great he is. I see how he's taken care of me before, and I know that I can trust and ask him for help. But the last one I think is the most important, and it's something people I think struggle with. I call it say what? Help, thanks, wow, and say what? That means I need to listen. I want to listen to what the Bible says, but I also want to say, God, speak to my spirit. Like, what do you want to reveal that I'm not thinking about, that you want to work in me? Or what are you proud of in me? Or what are the relationships I've been neglecting? Or what are the things you want me to do? That's seeking the wisdom, like Jesus in the garden. What would you have me do? What is your will? And how do you want me to respond? It's listening. And you can journal what you think you're hearing from God. You can listen to him and then pray back. Okay, I think I'm hearing you say this. And then you can just read the Bible and go, man, those words are popping off the page for a reason to give me guidance. Help, thanks, wow, and say what? Listening to God. When we do these things, they can fill you with a confidence to move forward, not in your own power, not in your own wisdom and anxiety, but saying, I actually got guidance from God. And I can trust that if I follow his guidance, if I stay near and give ear to his guidance on a daily basis, I cannot fail. I can trust my Father because I've seen him act. I know he's good, and I know he not only wants to help others through me, but he actually will use those things to strengthen and lift me up as well. Prayer allows God to change us to his will. What this means is that every day the Father can fill you with the confidence to act under his guidance and the humility to stop believing that it's all about you and what you do and about how good you are, and that you can depend on his will to guide you. May God's grace and peace be with you. May you put in prayer as a part of your schedule in life this week. In Jesus' name, amen.